Rebecca Long-Bailey, Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Thank you so much for joining Novara Media.
Pleasure.
So you're joining me after Jeremy Corbyn's leaders' speech.
Yes.
But the biggest news really to come out of conference today is the Labour for a Green New Deal motion, which passed, committing the Labour Party to a 2030 target to achieve net zero emissions. It's a very ambitious programme. Is that target going to be in the next Labour Party manifesto?
Well, both motions that we'd agree, we had a fantastic compositing meeting where all of the constituency parties who put motions in and trade unions and a lot of the constituency members were part of Labour for a Green New Deal. And eventually it became quite clear in the meetings that one group wanted the date and the other group wanted to be as ambitious as possible, but were worried about having a fixed date without having a credible plan ready now to go. And both motions were really ambitious, and after a lot of discussions, I think a lot of the concerns that many people had were put into both motions, and they both passed at party conference, which was great because that's what I wanted: unity across the movement and a recognition that we've got to act faster and we've got to pool our resources and our knowledge together to get there as quickly as possible. And on the target itself, we know that the IPCC have said that we've basically got 11 years to get the majority of the work done needed to tackle climate change. And the worry is, without a fixed target or an ambition towards a fixed target, then people might coast along. And then if we try to do everything closer to 2050, it'll be far too late, because 2030 is the tipping point where we have to have much of the work done by. The motions themselves both call for a credible plan and to work with the scientific community, the trade union movement and industry, etc., to formulate that plan. And they're all predicated on a just transition, because that was one of the critical things I said had to be at the heart of any ambitious target, was the fact that it shouldn't fall on the shoulders of workers and the poor and the vulnerable. We've got to find a way to make sure that they're at the heart of any future plan so that it actually benefits their lives, and it can. And we're already on our way with our green industrial revolution, and we've got to work more quickly now and work across the whole movement to get the fantastic ideas developed in a lot of detail as quickly as possible to take us towards that target.
So the impression that I'm getting from your answer is, because there were two different motions that passed, one which had the 2030 target and one which didn't, that's going to give the leadership considerable leeway to decide whatever date they think is preferable to go in the Labour Party manifesto. Is that correct?
I think both motions were essentially the same in their outlook and most of the stuff that was in them, apart from the target was in one and it wasn't in the other. So it gives us, both together are pretty much exactly the same with the targets.
So what target do you want to see in the next Labour Party manifesto?
We need to get to a net zero as quickly as possible, and I think everybody recognises that 2050 is far too late. And my worry is that we've got to have done most of the work by 2030. And one of the comments that I made on the media this morning was that having a fixed target might worry people, because we've got to work quickly to get a plan together. But if we've got 90% of it done by 2030 and it takes us till 2035 to get the rest done, I'll take that on the chin, because that day will have pushed everybody on into taking that action and developing that plan.
Your speech earlier today was very well received, especially at Novara Media. It was music to our ears to hear you talk about public luxury and nothing being too good for the working class. I can see where you're coming from there. The idea is that a Green New Deal and greening our economy doesn't have to mean austerity. It doesn't have to mean that people lower their levels of consumption.
No, exactly.
At the same time, though, there are going to be areas of the economy where it does seem like people are going to have to change what they do. And whereas greening the electricity grid doesn't seem to be politically problematic, what about things like flights? We don't yet have a way to make flights environmentally friendly. So is the Labour Party going to be offering the public the possibility of rationing flights?
We've got to have social justice at the heart, as I've said, and what we can't say to people is, sweeping changes, it's your own personal responsibility to tackle the climate crisis, because that won't bring people with us, and it won't show them that the biggest economic lever that we've ever had in a generation, if we got right, that could actually transform people's lives and make them better and create jobs and luxury, usher in a new era of public luxury, if you like. If we go the other way into austerity politics again, by saying, no, actually, it's all about cutting back, no cars, no meat, no holidays, the public will not respond well to that. But that's not to say that we don't need to look at measures. So, for example, the vast majority of flights are taken by a small proportion of the public, you know, frequent flyers. Why would you fly within the UK when you can get public transport? But then the argument at the moment is that public transport is inefficient, it's not quick enough, we've not invested enough in it. And one example I'll give is that we did a Green Industrial Revolution event in Cornwall a while ago. And I was looking at how long it was going to take me to get from Manchester on the train to Cornwall, and it's a long time. It's about, you know, 7 hours, 8 hours on a train when you're kind of changing as well. It took an hour to fly, and it was cheaper to fly. And that's not acceptable. And I think the government must, and when we're in government, we'll do that, make sure that public transport is more affordable, and we're investing in public transport so people can get right across the country as quickly as possible, not to the centre of London, which seems to be the focus of the Conservative government.
So you've talked about how you're going to make a Green New Deal or a Green Industrial Revolution popular with the electorate. What about elite interests that might oppose the project or the policies that you're proposing? Are you expecting that there'll be any enemies in the establishment to the sort of policies that you're talking about pushing forward?
Well, it's not just about greening the economy. This is a shift in a whole school of economic thought that we've been led to believe is the right path for the last 40 years. And it's turning that on its head and pressing the reset button and demanding an economy that has an interventionist government that invests, but it does so for the betterment of its people. That should be the founding principle of any government decision, as well as making sure that it delivers the best possible fruition and distribution of wealth that industry can bring to workers and communities through common ownership, and making sure that we have an economy that actually delivers a quality of life, a modern standard of living. And that's going to be difficult for some interests. I don't say, you know, most businesses, they're made up of people who are moral and nice and they want everyone to do well. And when they're brought on board and they've travelled on the journey and they recognise that capitalism has to change fundamentally, and that is being uttered in some unlikely circles at the moment, that's fantastic. And I think the majority will be brought along and will develop and embrace this idea. But of course, there will be interests who, you know, predicated on greed, that won't be happy to see the system change, and they'll want to keep the status quo, and that's sad, but there's nothing we can do about that.
Rebecca Long-Bailey, thank you so much for joining us today, and we can't wait to see the Green Industrial Revolution and the Green New Deal fleshed out in practice.
Lovely.